In this segment, we'll start by talking about safety. First of all, personal safety, what to watch out for inside the computer that could actually hurt you. Basically, there's only one thing in here that could hurt you, and that is this, the 120 volts input from the wall outlet to the computer. Now, some people say that you actually have to have this plugged in order to protect the computer from static discharge. That's wrong. As a matter of fact, we can leave this unplugged. We need to leave it unplugged for our own safety, and we do not need to have that grounded to the building in order to keep the system safe as well. So that's the first issue. There are going to be some times when you're doing troubleshooting on the computer and you do need to have it plugged in. So you just need to realize that the 120 volts that's in there stays inside the power supply, which is kind of a cube right here with its own self-contained area. We are not going to go inside that power supply. If anything goes wrong with it, and we have ways of testing it from the outside, if anything goes wrong with it, we'll just replace it. It's only about a $50 item, but we're not going to go inside it. Now, with regards to system safety, we do need to practice something called ESD procedures, which stands for electrostatic discharge, and that protects the system from us accidentally damaging it. The way we do that is based on something called charge equalization. Now, I said we didn't have to have this grounded to the building, but what we do have to do is use a common ground between the mat where all of our work, all the parts are going to be placed as we bring them in from their bags or their boxes or whatever. Put them on the mat first, and then when we need to put them into the computer, we need to make sure that the computer case itself is equalized to the mat. And so in order to do that, we have a wire coming from the mat to this alligator clip. We just clip it to the case, and now the charges are equalized. Furthermore, when I pick up the card or motherboard or whatever, or even drive, I want to make sure that I am at the same level as the case and the mat, so everything is at the same level. So when I pick it up, I've already equalized the charges, and we'll be picking it up taking it out of a bag. The bag is also static protected, and so when you take it out of the bag, I'm holding on to this, and when you put it in the computer, this is already equalized to there, so we're always going to be perfectly charge equalized. That is the basis of ESD procedures. Now, some people will say that you don't need a wrist strap, and they are technically correct. If you're always touching the case, you are equalizing yourself with the case, but there's going to be times when your hand moves off the case for a moment, and you can pick up a static charge pretty quickly. So we're going to be playing it safe and using the static wrist strap every time, anytime we're working on the computer. Then we have the toolkit that we need to be using. And I'm sure you've seen this standard toolkit. It's available in all kinds of stores, and it's a good place to start, but we need to add a few things to it. We do have a couple of nut drivers, a couple of screwdrivers, some special purpose tools. That's all described in the book. But there's a couple things we need to add to it. Number one is a flashlight. This allows us to see inside the corners and see the jumper settings very clearly, so that's an essential tool to add to the system. Another one is a screwdriver. Now, we have some screwdrivers in the basic toolkit, but this one's a magnetic type screwdriver, and some people say that this could cause damage to the computer system. There's no way it can damage any electronics. Now, it can possibly cause a problem with magnetic disks, but in order to do that, you actually have to touch the tip of the screwdriver, or the magnetic tip, to a disk, and if you're doing that, you're already going to be damaging it physically, so it's really not an issue. And believe me, having a magnetic tip is really nice because you can put the screws right in it, and you can be using it from any angle, down, up, sideways, it doesn't matter, and it's going to hold that screw until you're done with it, and so it's not going to fall. It's going to make your job a lot easier. So a magnetic tip screwdriver is essential. Furthermore, we're going to have a digital multimeter we're going to be using. This one's from Radio Shack, very inexpensive, typically $25, sometimes they're on sale for $18. This is also described in the book and how to use it, and we're going to use it to test the power supply. There's going to be some cases where you might need to use that, a little multimeter, so that's a good thing to add to it. Finally, I like to have an extra speaker. Now, we aren't going to worry about this in this case because we're going to plug it in from the beginning, but there's going to be a lot of cases where when you're starting to put a system together, you get no beeps whatsoever. You know it could be the power supply, it could be the CPU, it could be the motherboard, or it could be the speaker. It's much easier to replace the speaker than it is to replace the motherboard. So simply all we do is we just plug it in, try it out. If it doesn't beep, then we know that it's something else. If it does beep, then we know we simply have a bad speaker. So that's basically what we're going to start with as far as a proper toolkit. Okay, now that we've got our procedures out of the way and we know which tools we're going to be using, we'll be moving on to actually taking the covers off the case and getting set to look at the power supply and how the power connectors get plugged in, and that'll be the next segment.